Hello, everyone. Still morning, so I'll say good morning. After a very busy high-level week, the PGA wanted to speak with you all to sort of recap what has happened and to take your questions. We have until 12:15 because we do have to get to the noon briefing, and then there's another briefing after that. So we will get to as many questions as we can in the time that we have. And I will turn it over now to Her Excellency Annalena Baerbock to deliver a few remarks.
Well, still good morning also from my side, and thank you for being here at the end of the whirlwind that was the high-level week. I would like to use this opportunity to look a bit back at the high-level week and also focus on where we go from here on. I think we could see during the general debate that there was a high attendance, including 189 member states, out of which were 124 heads of states. And as you might have heard in my opening speech, I opened the debate underlining that the United Nations is at a crossroads facing political and financial pressure, but also stressing that we need the United Nations more than ever and that we shouldn't give in to cynics who weaponize the difficult situation and sometimes also the failures to question the entire organization. And I would say if anybody had a doubt if this organization still matters or still is relevant, you could see it, how crowded the room was, not only on Tuesday, but also on Monday already. So therefore, I'm summing up that this is the house of diplomacy and dialogue, that the role of the General Assembly especially has increased over the last time. And that the debates we had in the General Assembly, obviously, they were in some parts controversial, but this is all about this institution, that we do have the hard debates about the hard topics. During the debates, we could also see that the most pressing issue is peace and security. Member states always related to the situation that we have the wars ongoing, not only Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, but also the forgotten ones. Many of them underlined that without delivering on the 2030 agenda, the SDGs, sustainable peace won't be reached. And also in my bilateral meetings, I had roughly 70 bilateral meetings, the issue of delivering on the SDGs, facing the climate crisis, by that ensuring that the biggest threat of the century for all, the climate crisis, will be managed together, was the overall theme. Obviously, it underlined as well in the debates that we have to have discussions on these topics connected to peace and security, but it was also made very clear by many speakers, what I touched on also at the beginning of the General Assembly and the high-level week, that if we are failing on some of these topics, it's not the UN as such which is failing, but the UN is only as strong as we collectively uphold the principles of our charter, the principles by international law. And we could hear and see that again also this morning at the veto initiative debate. Having said this, I felt a strong spirit for many, many countries, underlining that this is not only the place where we should discuss hard topics, but this is a life insurance for their own countries. Many embraced the motto, better together, not only in speeches in the general debate, but also in many, many side events, giving examples of their own countries where the United Nations was the place or the reason that they could be liberated, that they could be reunited and also committed themselves for strengthening, therefore, this dear organization. So the questions around the UN80 initiatives, the reform of the United Nations was also one of the biggest topics in the bilateral discussions, as you can imagine. I encouraged member states to take back home the discussions here, how we can strengthen the organization, how we can look at the financing, how we can make it more efficient, more agile in these times, and also encouraged the foreign ministers and head of states to bring these debates to their national parliament. Because we know it's one thing to give a speech here at the United Nations, but then when you're faced again with debates on taxpayers' money or on certain topics in your national parliament, it might sound a bit different. So engaging on this process is highly important, especially also on the part of the reform process of this ADS session, selection of a new Secretary General in line with the UN Charter and the General Assembly resolutions. As you probably have also watched during the general debates, there have been a few words that drew applause as the often mentioned mentioning of Madam Secretary General. So this will be obviously an interesting debate coming up, but coming to an end, I would also raise your attention to the topics we didn't discuss in the Assembly Hall, but in the many, many other halls. We had the debates on NCDs, on use, especially also on AI governance, on final structure. So these are the topics of the future, where not only many ministers engaged, but civil society, experts. Again, this is also, if you talk about the House of Diplomacy, inviting experts from different fields, be it in the healthcare system, be it in artificial intelligence, underlines that here in New York people come together to shape together the future. Overall, a high-level week is also a very personal thing, not only the new dimension of speed dating. I was used to bilaterals in 30 minutes. Now there was a way less time on the speed dating mode, but it's also about trust building. Trust is the currency of diplomacy, and I think one could see, especially when we were commemorating 30 years of Beijing Declaration, when one female leader spoke after the other, that joining forces, taking the right course at the crossroad, doing the right things and stand up for certain rights also gives a special spirit which carried over the upcoming days of the high-level week. So now that the speeches are done and the high-level meetings are over, we get down to the hard work of delivering on commitments, knowing that our world is not perfect, so we will struggle again. But I believe that not only this morning's debate on the veto initiative, but what followed after the two-states conference, also as the plan from the US president is a case for that this week really mattered, bringing real results. So we keep up working, unafraid, unbroken, and in the spirit outlined in our just launched one-year-long campaign, Better Together. And I thank you for not only participating today, but especially covering this high-level week, because this is all about to bring it to the people around the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam President, for this press briefing on behalf of ANCA. It's Valeria Robecco from ANSA Newswire. You, in a way, kind of already responded to the question I had, which was which concrete step, if any, have you seen during the high-level week? But if you can elaborate a little bit better on that, specifically on the hot topics, so not only the Palestinian state and Gaza, Ukraine, but also, for example, on Iran. Did you see any hope to, diplomacy working on the JCPOA in the next months? Thank you so much.
It was a strong call from all member states, or almost all member states, that we are indeed better together. And in these shaky times, this is already a strong commitment, because there were some out there questioning if this institution is still worth it. So the vast majority of member states underlined that it's the United Nations what the world needs also for the next 80 years. Committing to reform this institution, so this is a second takeaway, the strong commitment to reform this institution, to save the institution, and thirdly, by touching on the hard topics, not shying away from also controversial issues. Most and overall, this is the situation currently in Gaza, because there was a strong call already before from the vast majority of member states of what we should do. So it's not a lack of solutions, but it's a lack of implementation. And this is one of the outcomes, I would say, one of the most important outcomes of that high-level week, that politically we moved forward on the very, very difficult dossier of ending this decade-long conflict, because there has never been before such a strong commitment for an own independent Palestinian state, even though one of the first resolutions talked about it. But secondly, there has never been before such a strong commitment, especially also from the region, to the security of the state of Israel. So taking these points together, which are highlighted in the New York Declaration, and this was the front of the high-level week, and then building on that, there's now a call from all P5 members on lifting the situation with humanitarian regards, but also releasing all the hostages. So the strong call on the Israeli government and the Hamas to come to a ceasefire. This is one takeaway, which didn't happen in one special second in the room, but over the week and the days before the week and now after the week, this is one of the outcomes. Also, even though you said besides the big wars, Sudan, bringing Sudan again on the international agenda, making clear also there that there is a special need for international cooperation, also for actors out of the region, but supported by others. Same goes for Ukraine. If you would have listened, or if you listened closely to the speeches in the general debate, I think never before over the last 3 years I heard so many aligned statements from different actors, from different groups around the world, underlining that only with peace negotiation this violation of the Charter can be ended. And then coming to the topics you said, which are not so often in the news, that we had the first high-level meeting on Rohingya. This was important for the millions of people, not only in Myanmar, but those fled to Bangladesh, raising again the awareness. I mean, we have a funding there of 12% of the needs, so even small amounts which were committed to in that meeting help bringing children back to school, deliver on food. On other issues, like you mentioned also Iran, it's not that there's a high-level event, but the bilateral talks with the foreign minister of Iran, together with European partners and others, using this momentum also that we have discussion around peace in the Middle East, can be a moment which brings us a step further here. And obviously, again, UN institution play a major role in that one. I would also like to underline again the AI global governance structure as a concrete outcome of this high-level week. Also the first biennial summit on sustainable finance. This is one of the major topics for most of the countries around the world. We have the techniques, we have the answers, but the finance is missing. So delivering on 2030 needs a sustainable finance. So also these results make clear that the UN is more than a situation in the Security Council, or is more a debate of ministers and head of state, but it's the results on the ground which matter.
You had your hand up, and then Pam. And then Edie.
Thank you, Madam President, and belated best wishes for your journey at the UN. You mentioned you had 70 bilaterals and other meetings that you had to deliver remarks. But let me ask you, across the world, including many developed countries, populism is on the rise. And the trust in the multilateralism is fading among the people of the world. How do you envision making the UN relevant to everyday citizen? And if I may ask about the trade, since we have now a rising trend in imposing tariffs and that impacts the everyday life of every citizen. Do you envision a way where the UN can play a new role, whether on the what's remaining of the World Trade Organization or as a new format for a better and much fairer trading system? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very important question. First of all, even though I don't have the numbers now with me, there's an interesting study out there that what many from us might perceive, because social media is so strong and negative headlines click 6 times better than positive headlines, which is a real problem of the world. There are the polls lately that the trust, especially in developed countries, is way higher than the commitments of some of the governments. So the perception by the people is different in many cases than what the position by some of the governments is. Because in a daily life, people know and they see what staff of the UN is doing. I mean, most of the people in the world do not want to see children starving. So seeing UNICEF and seeing the World Food Programme delivering food to people, this is what normal people around the world support. So the trust in the institution as such is way higher than the political commitment. And also in developing countries, and this is why I gave also my opening speech these examples, looking at the COVID pandemic, looking at the effects of climate change, what is very important for especially young people, but also experience social media bullying, for example. Many young people know that it needs international regulation for this cross-regional topics to be faced and dealt with. So this is also my answer to the question for those who are still in doubt or those who are unsure, because obviously there are also shortcomings. We have to make way more public the successes of the United Nations. This is not about putting glitter about something which is not working, but this is making clear to speak about the shortcomings, make it more efficient, but also say what would happen without the United Nations. The example I've give, 120 million people would literally starved if the World Food Programs hadn't delivered the last year. 60 million children wouldn't have gone to school if we wouldn't have had UNICEF working. None of us could enter an airplane, so I think it's like 5 billion flights per year, if we wouldn't have the Civil Aviation Organization also under the head of the UN. So bringing out these positive cases is, in these shaky times, I believe also the responsibility of the UN institutions, also the responsibility of the PGA. And this is why we also launched this campaign, Better Together. You might have seen that on Times Square. You could see that also on billboard inside the United Nations headquarters, outside on the street. And we are bringing out this campaign to make clear this is the United Nations, unafraid, unbroken, standing for these principles. Same goes, and again, we do have to do awareness raising, and you can help by writing these positive stories. It's not writing about something to please somebody, but it's writing about reality. There were interesting figures, again, in this financial high-level meeting from the president of the WTO, underlining that even though we have now also the situation of some restrictions, but also tariffs, that overall there was not a total breakdown of relating to the international trade regulation, but rather a new commitment of it. So like often in times of crisis, the majority sticks to what is there because they know that the international regulations, also international trade regulations, but also international law is the best for their own countries, because they could never face these situations alone. But again, I think the data of WTO is very impressive, and maybe we can also deliver it afterwards from them.
I think Pam had a question next, then Edie, did you hand up, and then Desi. So Pam and then Edie.
Thank you, Lenise. It's Pamela Falk from U.S. News and World Report. Madam President, congratulations on a successful UNGA. Another big picture question. You mentioned Gaza. The General Assembly has gone farther to outline what's next than the Security Council. Do you see the General Assembly as being more proactive in setting policy in the future? And then a little question, if you don't mind, in your national capacity. PGAs have gone on to be heads of government, heads in their own countries, and in and leadership positions in the UN. Do you see anything in the future that you could talk about what you'd be doing next for this PGA after this GA closes? Thank you.
For the first part of the question, we have seen it this morning that there is a more active role of the General Assembly, but not since yesterday, but since we had the veto initiative in 2022. Where we have 22, if I remember correctly, cases of veto, and then the General Assembly taking over. So this process has been ongoing in the last years, and again, in moments of crisis, this is also always a moment for new opportunity. And in my role as a PGA, because there's a strong call of the vast majority of the membership to underline if the Security Council is being blocked, that the General Assembly should lift up their responsibilities, then it's a role also of the PGA to enable these debates like we had in the morning. This is what I discussed with many heads of state also in the reform process, because I've heard, and my predecessor has heard, that there is a big wish for the broader membership to also have in the reform a bigger role of the General Assembly in these structural discussions we are ongoing. The selection process of the Secretary General is part of it. So it could be also a blueprint of a new engagement, but again, it depends on member states. What I found interesting is really this cross-regional cooperation. The United Nations is set up, so if you study that at university, you study all the different regional groups, you study all the different settings. We have also speaking lists sometimes. The proposal of the PGA is coming out of a regional group, which also there you can see doesn't really reflect the state of the world anymore, because so many more countries have joined the United Nations. So therefore the issue of more engagement cross-regional, I think is a very positive trend, because I think we have seen also that it unlocks some of the blockages we had. We saw it at climate conferences with a very strong call of bringing forward like the loss and damage fund in the last 3 years. We saw it with the conference on the two-state solution, that it was cross-regional organized. And the good thing is that the base is then always United Nations. So when cross-regional actors are coming together, they choose New York and the headquarters of the United Nations to have this two-states conference here in New York. With regard to the second part of the question, I'm smiling because I thought this is only a question from the German journalist, but I give you the same answer because this is like 365 days, very short term. I think there's probably no other job in the world where you have such a short term, so you have to be ready from the first second on. So it was great to build on the experience I had before, seeing many old colleagues and old friends, having many of the dossiers I dealt with in my former capacity. But because I have to use every day of the 365 and 20 have already passed, so I'm focusing really on this job, and what comes after, I don't know.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. I wonder if you can tell us how you plan to follow up on two of the big things that the General Assembly will be facing this year. First, on artificial intelligence, where there is growing calls for some kind of guardrails. Do you actually expect any kind of a document to come out approved by all member nations that would at least initiate this process? We know that the Secretary General is appointing this new scientific panel. And secondly, on the election of the next Secretary General, have you received any nominations, and are you planning to follow the previous practice of hearings for where all member states can ask questions, and when you believe this whole process might start? Thank you.
Well, for the artificial intelligence, I think one can only applaud, especially the Secretary General, but also all the other actors, bringing this very important topic to the United Nations. Because again, if we would like to underline younger generation, that this is a place where world topics are being discussed, and this is not only peace and security, because we are hoping that at one point in history we don't have to deal with so many wars anymore. Then we have to face the most important topics of the future, and we have seen many revolutions, technical revolutions in the last century and the centuries before, but none of them is so rapid as artificial intelligence. I would say hardly any of them gives so many opportunity, but also, as we all know, challenges and even threats. So having this conference and engaging now this topic as one big part of the work of the United Nations is heavily important. There are urgent 3 points also as an outcome of the meetings we had. The question of concentration. So at the moment we are facing the problems that AI is in the hands of only a few, and also the benefits out of this therefore are not delivering for the vast majority. Second is governance. If we do not regulate it, and I gave an example in one of the meetings I had, we have a tendency that old biases are coming back. For example, deep fake with sexual content is targeting 99% in the cases women and girls. So there are points where you say this can be a solution, but it can also be like a total backlash on many topics. The third is sustainability. We know that artificial intelligence needs a lot of power, energy, and electricity. And again, it can be a great opportunity. If we use it in a smart way, we can save a lot of energy. We can think of where do we have the power generators, but on the opposite is also true. It can be also doing a big of damage to sustainable development. So we need equitable capacity building, inclusive oversight, and climate conscious innovation to ensure that AI benefits all, particularly the Global South. And you mentioned that the Secretary General has set up the scientific panels. I will appoint 2 co-chairs for each part of these dialogues, one from a developing country and one from a developed country, tasked with identifying the main topics and producing then a co-chair summary of every annual dialogue. And again, as I said in the beginning, I think we can really see the charm here if we do an outreach to experts, so scientists and companies, and work together with them, showing also that the UN is not only something for governments and heads of state, but also something for the whole part of our societies. With regard to the Secretary General process, the revitalization resolution underlined already the big wish for member states. There were some proposals which didn't get consensus, so we are working on the base of this resolution, as it is a wish of the General Assembly. In the resolution we have also the wish of the member states to have the joint letter, which was also in previous selection processes, by the 4th quarter, so starting now. I met yesterday also with the current president of the Security Council to not only discuss the working program of the Security Council, but also to discuss with the Russian ambassador about the Secretary General process and the issue of the letter. So there will be, as it has been also passed, a joint letter by the President of the General Assembly and the President of the Security Council, meaning the Security Council, outlining the different parts. And you mentioned the hearings. The hearings are mentioned again also in the revitalization resolution. So one could think that this will be also part of the letter, but the letter still has to be written.
Yeah, Madam President, Xu Deji with China Central Television. First, thank you for having this briefing. Last time you were here, and you said you were joking that when you meet with all the world leaders, you would ask them, do you know UN80 initiative? Have you told them that? And after you listened to their speeches and communicating with all the world leaders, including President Trump, do you have now a clearer structure how to push for the UN80 initiative to, let me just quote, to avoid all our countries going to hell? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to one of the first Secretary General of this institution, we have the clear guidance that it's our job here to prevent humanity from going to hell and also not building on heaven. And I think this was also the strong call from many, many leaders who embraced by themselves not only the motto, better together, and the motto was better together, 80 years and on. For peace and security, human rights and development. And I heard, I mean, I was not sitting there the whole time, but while I was sitting there, I would say in almost every speech already by the heads of states themselves, embracing this motto and also making clear that for delivering on this motto, they expect a reform. So yes, UN80 initiative was one of the main points in every bilateral, and at many points, the heads of states came already with their proposals, what they see here as a need of reform. And again, as I said, and this is a positive thing, also addressing that they see the need for this cross-regional cooperation. I've heard already from different not only PRs, but also ministers, many foreign ministers I met who are getting more than the heads of states most of the time into these processes, saying we from our region, from the Asian region, are thinking of working with some of the European, Latin American ones, because we heard also in our bilaterals or in their speeches that they are really focusing on the reform to deliver on all three parts of the United Nations: peace and security, human rights, and sustainability. You mentioned, I mean, this is the reality, so one shouldn't like shy away from that there are also contradictory topics, that not everybody agrees on everything. But this is why for me it was important to underline that this is then in the hands and the responsibilities from all the different member states to uphold the principles, to deliver by themselves what we need. I mean, the reform debate is also a debate that we have technique here in our General Assembly hall, which is really outdated. So if we are underlining that this institution has to move to the 21st century, also with the technique of the 21st century, then I heard from a couple of ministers saying, so if everybody would pay their contributions, maybe we would be capable of investing also in the technical issues here in the House. So yes, I think especially the point that it was not everything in a perfect way working, but we could see actually where we also have some challenges was this unique opportunity that most of the countries said at the end, okay, we know we really have to stand up ourselves, because otherwise we cannot make this United Nations stronger for the future.
And then we had a question. I think we have time for two more questions. You had your hand up for a while there.
Hello, Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera English. I just make my question very quick. Thank you for holding the briefing. I just want to follow up on Edie's question about the selection of the next Secretary General. Have you received any formal nominations at this point? And a follow-up to that, in your national capacity, is it time for a woman to lead the United Nations? Thank you.
So yeah, thanks for repeating the question. I've heard, because I was chairing at that moment, that one country said in their speech that the former president would be their candidate. I've heard also from another one who said it already publicly in my bilateral, but these were no official announcements, because, as I said, the process is that first we have the joint letter, and in the joint letter that we then call for official applications, if you can say that in that regard. again, question about the next Secretary General lies fully in the hands of the membership. We know in the hands of the Security Council and the General Assembly, and it's up to decide also by the General Assembly how much they would use their role this time in this process. We have heard, this is why I mentioned it, around the discussions of the revitalization resolution, that there's a quite large group saying that they have quite concrete proposals for this process, also facing the situation, as it has been said also in the Pact for the Future, that in 80 years there hasn't been a woman, and an organization which is standing up for certain principles. One might wonder, and this is why I said it also in my own speech, out in 80 years how it was not possible to find a single woman if you have potentially 4 billion candidates. And I've heard that many times. There were many speeches also by presidents who said, this is our call for this time. But we have to see if this is also the majority of countries following up on the issue of saying the question who will lead this organization is also a question of the credibility of the principles of this institution.
Lady here.
Madam President, it does feel You spoke about the importance of results for an institution that is fighting against a crisis of relevance. What is the one thing that you hope to accomplish in this session that would make this, as you mentioned, short tenure a success for your leadership? And then just really short second question. I'm sure you noticed many of the biggest stories that came out of High Level Week had to do with broken elevators and a broken teleprompter. Not so much about policy and diplomacy, and I think that's because the press has such limited controlled access to really report on this hard diplomacy that's happening behind closed doors. Any plans to change that?
I can only repeat what I said before. If we would have all the funding we should have in this institution, we wouldn't have to have reform debates on peacekeeping missions being shut down or cut down because the resources are not there. And the same goes to the technical equipment in the whole overall. So bless you. Also, when I was speaking at the microphone, you could see that something is blinking there. So the issue about everybody paying their contribution, like many ministers underlined also in their speeches, is obviously one which touches also the functioning of the whole organization. If there's one thing, which is always hard to say, because obviously the biggest wish for all is peace, but this is not an institution to wish for, but what is in our own hands to make over this year within the reform process and the way how we proceed on the selection of the Secretary General, this organization stronger and also in the eyes of the people more relevant than before. This means, with the many crises we have behind them, delivering obviously also in the outcome of these.
Much, I think.
Quick follow-up, Madam President. Quick follow-up on the selection of
Sorry, this is also the way I lead. We start on time in the General Assembly Hall, and even if an ambassador is calling and saying, I'm late, I'm saying, I'm sorry, every minute costs and counts.
Do you plan to reinstate the practice of holding an open debate among the candidates for the Secretary General?
We can follow up, and I can provide some answers for you.